guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm sure you can tell by the title that it's not going to be, a product review or anything beauty related for that matter. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to tell you guys a story. I think it's interesting. We all have a story, and our story makes us who we are. And each of us have a different story, of course, because we've lived different lives, but all of our stories are made up of kind of a collection of little stories or even isolated events that occurred in our lives and kind of create an outline to our lives. And that outline is responsible for, molding us and shaping us and turning us into who we are today. Now, unfortunately, some of the stories or events that happen in our lives do not affect us positively, and but they still kind of create the structure and the framework for who we are. So this one is one of those that did not affect me positively. Unfortunately, I do have quite a few stories like this in my collection of stories. I think I have probably about 6 stories that are similar in nature to this one. Unfortunately, they all involve complete strangers who were men, and 3 of which had to involve law enforcement, because I was literally in fear for my safety and for my life. So this is going to be one of those stories. I'm going to tell you about it. Now, it has framed me and affected me in a way that to this day I am kind of the type of person that is always looking over her shoulder. I oftentimes carry mace, and I'm very aware of the people around me, and I'm constantly questioning people's intention and motives and stuff like that, unfortunately. But I'm not somebody who runs around in the world confined in a little bubble. I'm never like on my phone or having my headphones on when I'm alone or anything like that. So I feel like it's made me a smarter member of society, but I wish it hadn't happened to me. So anyways, let's just go ahead and jump in and let me tell you the story. Okay, so this happened to me when I was 29 years old, and this is the most recent of the creepy stories that have happened to me, and fortunately it was 13 years ago. Nothing's happened very recent. I've also been a stay-at-home mom for over 10 years now, so I've kind of been a little bit isolated from the world. I think one of the biggest events in my life every week is volunteering at my children's school. Other than that, I go to the grocery store. I'm just not really an active participant in the world right now. But anyways, so this happened to me about 14 years ago, and I was 29 at the time, and I was trying to prepare for something that I was really excited about. I was working a booth at one of the Arnold Classic events, and I was doing a lot of promotions at the time. I was a Coors Light girl at the time, but actually I wasn't a Coors Light girl at that time. I was a Coors Light girl previously, but at this time I had a great opportunity to work one of the nutritional supplement booths at the Arnold Classic trade show, and so I wanted to be in really good shape. So I was the type of person that preferred to work out outside rather than inside of a gym, and so I would get a lot of my exercise outside, just in my neighborhood. Or we also had a neighborhood park that had a really nice wooded track around it that was really nice, that I would go to sometimes. But on this particular day, I just decided that I was going to go walk around just the blocks of my neighborhood. I lived in a nice neighborhood in Southwest Austin at the time, and I lived in a cul-de-sac. And it's kind of funny because we had this woman that lived right across the street from us, or right across the cul-de-sac from us, and she was one of these women that she was just constantly in her lawn. She was constantly manicuring, her lawn. She had beautiful trees, beautiful flowers, and she was just always giving it a ton of attention. But she would do something kind of funny. She was always taking pictures, of her lawn and her house from different angles, but she would always get in her car and drive around and drive up to her house from different angles so that she could see what it looked like, and then she'd get back out and she'd start messing with the flowers and stuff like that. It was a really beautiful yard, and she plays a role in this little story, which is why I'm mentioning her. So anyways, I decided that I was going to go for a walk, and I put on a sports bra, and I put on these little shorts, And then I had this body alarm. I have it right here. This thing is 20 years old, and my grandma gave it to me. When beepers just came out and everybody was getting a beeper, I remember getting this from my grandma for Christmas, and I opened it up thinking it was gonna be a beeper, and then it turned out to be a body alarm. But it has this little pin on it, and when you pull that pin, it makes a very, very loud noise, and it still works. This thing is like over 20 years old. I'm gonna let you hear it real fast. Turn down your volume. So that is a really loud alarm. So I would wrap this around my hand like that, and that's how I'd go walking. So so I put on my, like I said, sports brown shorts, and then I put on my headphones. I had a little iPod. I don't even think, you know, music, you could have music on phones just yet. And I just started walking around the block. Well, it was only my first lap, you know, and I'd walk around several blocks, but I just do this kind of like little zigzag thing. Well, I went around the corner, I came out of my cul-de-sac, went a couple houses down, took a left, and as I'm walking down the street, I could see that about 4 houses down, there was a house where it looked like they might have been having a little get-together or something, and there was 2 guys out front. I'm pretty sure one of them had a beer, and they were sitting like on the tailgate of a truck. And then the front door was open, and somebody else had come out and then went back in. And, you know, I didn't think much of it. I was like, as a matter of fact, I was thinking, are your parents out of town and you're having a party at your house? You know, that's what I thought. So anyways, they're on the right side of the street and I'm on the left side of the street. So I'm walking and I walk past them. Well, then about maybe 2 houses down, I come to a corner and I'm going to take a left. So I take a left and I get about maybe 2.5, 3 houses down. And all of a sudden, a van slows down, really slows down next to me. And I look over, and it's my neighbor that lives across the street. She had a minivan, and her daughter's in the car, and both of them just look terrified. And they start saying something to me, and I'm just like, what? You know, because I can't hear them because I have my headphones on. So I take out my headphones, and I look over, and I'm like, what? And then she was like, she said, get in the car. Her daughter looks terrified, and her daughter keeps looking back, and she's like, get in the car, get in the car. And I'm like, oh God, like I'm getting chills just thinking about it right now. And I said, what? And she goes, didn't you see that guy? And I said, no. I said, why? And she goes, didn't you see that guy chasing you with a knife? And I'm like, what? I mean, oh God, it's like affecting me right now. So she repeated herself, and she was like, there was a guy that was just chasing you with a knife. And all of a sudden I look back, and it's just like how it looks in the movies. It's like everything, first of all, went real, almost tunnel vision, you know, it kind of got black. And then it just really, really opened up. And then it was almost like I had like bionic vision, and I was like trying to see behind the bushes and everything else. And there was nobody there. But just the fact that she had said that, you know, I was just like, why would she be making up the story? And her daughter is in the car, and her daughter looks terrified. So she's like, she goes, get in the car, get in the car. For whatever reason, and I have no idea to this day why I did this, but I thought that I could run faster than a car, obviously. And I knew where my house was from the point where I was, and I still had to go probably about 6 houses down, 3 houses over, and then I was the first house into the cul-de-sac. So I just ran faster than I have ever run in my life. And I was so freaked out, and she just kind of paced me, I guess. I'm sure she did. But I wasn't even paying attention to that, to be honest with you. But I ran as fast as I possibly could into the house. So I run into the house, and my husband's, he wasn't my husband at the time, he was my fiance. We never used that word. We always said boyfriend, girlfriend until we got married, because that was such a silly word. I don't know why. Okay, so anyways. So he's laying on the bed, and I run in, and I just literally like fall apart. I'm trying to say stuff, and I'm trying to get out what had happened and what she had told me had happened. But I was just so flustered that I couldn't talk right, and I started crying. And then I accidentally pulled the pin out of my body alarm, so then that alarm's going off, and my husband's like, oh my God, I mean, he just sees me running, falling apart, so he's really concerned. So anyways, I pull it together, and he's like, you know, what happened? And I told him, you know, the lady across the street, she told me that somebody was chasing me with a knife, she told me to get in the car, blah, 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 and he's like, what? are you kidding me? Like, so he tells me, you know, lock yourself in the house. We had a big floppy-eared Doberman at the time, so I locked all the doors, and I was right close to the Doberman, and I'm looking out the blinds, like I'm sitting there going, oh my God, you know, what just happened? Why was somebody chasing me with a knife? I was just trying to process it all. It just didn't make sense to me. So I see him out there, and he's talking to the lady across the street, and she's, you know, flaring, and she's wide-eyed and everything, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So he comes back to the house, and he's like, I've got to go figure out what's going on. And my husband, he's a big man. He's always been big. He still is big and muscular. He's like 6'1". He's always been very muscular. But back then he was even way more muscular because we didn't have kids then, and so he could spend 4 hours a day in the gym if he wanted to. So he's very intimidating. And so he ran out of the house, and he said, you know, I'm going to go figure out what's going on. And so he goes around the corner to where I told him it happened and where she told him it happened, and he sees this woman, and she is it's about maybe 4 houses down. Actually, it's about 1 house down from the corner that I took a left on. She's about 1 house down on the other side, about 4 or 5 houses down from where I saw the kids, you know, in the front yard drinking. And so so he goes up to her, and he starts talking to her, and he says, you know, my girlfriend was just walking, you know, did you see anything? And then she said, as a matter of fact, I did. And she said, you know, I was sitting here trimming my bushes, and I saw your girlfriend coming up the street, and I saw her take the turn. And she said, all of a sudden, about 4 houses down, somebody just darted out of that house like a bat out of hell, holding something shiny up above their head, and they were sprinting. And she goes, then a car came around the corner, and they tucked it under, and then they ran back to that house. And so, oh my gosh, so my husband's like, are you kidding me? Oh my God, like he couldn't even believe that he had gotten this story from 2 witnesses, you know. Here I am not knowing any of this was happening behind me or around me, you know. And so, so he goes over to that house, and he calls the cops. First he calls the cops, and he goes over to that house, and he just starts banging on the door. You know, he wants to get some answers. Like, somebody from this house chased my girlfriend down the street with a knife, you know, she was completely unaware of it. So he goes over there, and he's banging on the door, nobody ever comes to the door. And then finally the cops arrive, and so he starts talking to the cops and stuff, and the cops actually took a statement from the lady that was doing her bushes, took a statement from my across the street neighbor, and was talking to my husband and stuff, and my husband's like, you know, what are my options here, you know? And he said, unfortunately, nobody's answering the door, and unfortunately, no crime was actually committed. Nobody was hurt, you know. We don't have any reason to charge anybody with anything. So basically, you can't even press charges. So my husband comes home, and he tells me all this, and I'm just, you just don't know what to think. All I could think of was, why does somebody want to kill me? You know, what did I do? It was so scary, and so, like, I could not come to terms with it in my head. I just thought, what have I done? You know, is it because of the way that I was dressed? Did I bring this on myself? You know, all I was doing was out there exercising, and something like that happens, and I didn't even know it was happening. You know, so anyways, I have to go to work the next morning, and this happened the day before Halloween, and I had to go to work the next morning. And I worked at a mortgage company at the time. I was a loan processor, and it was very, very hard for me to just leave the house. I was so scared. I thought somebody was going to follow me to work. I thought that, you know, somebody wanted to kill me, and it was just very scary. So I went to work that day, and I could barely work. I mean, I just kept bursting into tears, you know, throughout the day. Because you just, like I said, you just don't understand what you did, you know, what you did to deserve something like that. So, so my husband did go to work, but he has a friend, and he and his friend, they were both very, very tall and very muscular. At the time, they were actually workout buddies. And so he and his friend went to that house on their lunch break and decided that they were going to get answers no matter what. So he goes to the house, and I didn't even know he was going to be doing this, but he goes to the house, and he and his friend, they just start banging on the door, and they're banging and banging and banging. And this is probably, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, right around lunchtime. And all of a sudden, a guy answers the door, and my husband and his friend Mike, they just barge right in the house. And, they wanted to be intimidating because they wanted to get answers. So he starts saying, you need to tell me who from this house chased my girlfriend down the street with a knife yesterday. You better get some answers, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna press charges, and cops are gonna be involved, because they didn't know what the cops had told us, So this guy, he's a college student, and apparently about 3 or 4 guys all lived at that house, and they were all renting it together. A bunch of college students were renting that house together. And so immediately he just like throws his friend under the bus, and he's just like, so-and-so, he's the one who did it. He's the one who ran after her with a knife. And so my husband and Mike, they just start going through the house, like looking for this guy. And he's like, he's not here. He stayed the night at his girlfriend's house last night. So my husband said that as he's talking to this guy, that they're right on the desk, right there in the living room, is just this giant, butcher knife. And so my husband was like, why would he do that? And his explanation was, it was just a joke. Okay, my camera just turned off. Anyways, he said that they'd been drinking all day, and they saw me walk by, and they thought it would be funny, and they thought that they just all thought it would be funny if they scared me, and if they ran after me with a knife, just to see the look on my face, and that it would just be kind of a joke. And, whenever my husband told me that, I just thought to myself, what kind of joke? What kind of joke is that? And that's how some crimes actually get committed. They start out as a bunch of drunk, obliterated, fools, thinking that they're going to do something funny, and then it turns into a crime. And so anyways, he said, why would y'all think that was funny? This, no, we don't know, we're so sorry. This guy was so scared. So he said, you better tell your friend to give me a call. Here's my number. You need to tell him to call me immediately. If he doesn't, we're gonna have the cops here, this and that. So the guy called my husband, and he's just begging, please, please, please don't call the cops. It was just a joke. I'm so sorry. I'll come over and apologize to, your girlfriend if you want me to. And I'm sitting there going, last thing I want to do is see, the person that supposedly chased me with a knife. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what if the car had not come around the corner? How close would he have gotten to me? How far were you going to play this joke out? Because supposedly they got about a house length away from me. And I was already about like 2.5 or 3 houses down. So he had already ran past 2 houses. And so it's just, I keep thinking to myself, what if that car had not come around the corner? What if she were not, checking to see what her lawn looked like from a different angle, and she didn't come around the corner that day? What would have happened? How far would he have taken that joke, And what if he would have tripped? What if I would have freaked out and started, hitting him or something, and he has a knife in his hand? It's like so many like what ifs went through my head, like how many ways that joke could have gone wrong. Fortunately, and I want to believe that it was a joke, and that they weren't really planning on doing me any harm, but I'll never know. Of course, once somebody's caught, the story changes completely. So anyways, my husband was like, no, we don't want to see you, this and that. He's like, I swear, please don't get the cops involved. He doesn't want his parents to find out all this other stuff. So in the end, although it was something that happened to me that was very, very scary in my life, and I don't know, I still to this day don't know really what to think about it, or, of course you always, like I said, you think of the what ifs, but it's just one of those stories that kind of makes me the type of person to look over my shoulder. And, I'll tell you one thing, I'm never going to go walking by myself with headphones on, because I don't think it's smart. And I think that And I probably will never wear a sports bra and shorts unless I'm, you know, going to the gym or something. Even still, I don't show my torso anymore. I mean, I used to whenever I was younger, but, you know, if I'm going to be indoors, I mean, I might here at my house. I know I made a video where I'm showing my torso, but typically I don't dress like that. Not anymore, because you worry that maybe you're the reason that those things happen to you. So anyways, that's my story. It's I don't know if it was a long one. I don't know if it was an interesting one. It's definitely a scary one. It was a scary one for me. Thank God that did not have a scary ending. But that's it. So hope you enjoyed this creepy story. I'm glad my fear could bring some enjoyment too. But anyways, thank you for watching. Please leave your comments below. I'm sure some of you have had situations, you know, similar to mine that you maybe want to get off your chest, you know, and I'd love to read about them. No, I hope that nobody has, you know, stories like this, but like I said, I've got at least 5 more that are similar in nature. So stay tuned for those, and I'll see you later. Bye.